The fluorescent lights of Myers' diner buzzed softly in the late August heat, casting a tired glow over the red vinyl booths and checkered floor. Jasmine wiped down table 7 for the third time that evening, her dark fingers moving in practice circles even as her mind wandered somewhere far from this corner of Brooklyn. 28 years old, and she felt ancient. The kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. The kind that settled deep in your bones when you worked double shifts 6 days a week and still couldn't catch up to the bills that kept piling higher than her hopes. Her younger sister Keisha was getting worse. The lupus treatments weren't covered by the clinic's sliding scale anymore, and the hospital had sent another letter. Final notice, they called it, as if sickness respected deadlines, as if dying would wait for convenient payment plans. Jasmine's reflection caught in the window glass. Braids pulled back tight, uniform pressed despite being 3 years old, eyes that used to shine now carrying shadows deeper than Lake Michigan. She barely recognized the girl who'd left Chicago with dreams of nursing school and a future that didn't smell like old coffee and broken promises. Marcus, the cook, rang the bell. "Order up." She grabbed the plates, 2 eggs over easy, bacon crispy, wheat toast, and delivered them to the businessman in booth 3 who never looked up from his phone long enough to say thank you. The diner door chimed. Jasmine glanced up out of habit. 3 men walked in, and the temperature of the room seemed to drop 10 degrees despite the summer heat pressing against the windows. They moved with the kind of confidence that didn't ask for space, it took it. The first 2 were built like brick walls, dark suits stretched across shoulders that had clearly seen the inside of a gym more than a church. But it was the third man who made Jasmine's hand freeze halfway to refilling the coffee pot. Tall, maybe 6'2", dark hair swept back from a face carved from marble and bad intentions. His suit probably cost more than she made in 6 months, black and perfectly tailored, with a blood-red tie that looked like a declaration of war. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Gray like storm clouds, cold and assessing, sweeping the diner with the practiced gaze of someone who evaluated threats the way normal people checked the weather. Dominic Valentino. Even Jasmine, who didn't follow the news much beyond survival, knew that name. The tabloids called him the Devil of Brooklyn. The police called him untouchable. The streets called him boss. At 35, he'd taken his family's organization from old-school mob tactics into an empire that stretched from New York to Miami, all while staying just clean enough that his lawyers earned every penny of their ridiculous retainers. They took booth 8, the big corner one that Jasmine had just cleaned. She grabbed her order pad and walked over, forcing her exhausted legs to move normally, forcing her face into the pleasant mask she'd perfected over 3 years of serving people who rarely saw her as human. Up close, Dominic Valentino was even more intimidating. His cologne was expensive, something dark and woodsy that probably had an Italian name she couldn't pronounce. The 2 men with him, bodyguards clearly, positioned themselves with clear sightlines to both exits. Military precision disguised as casual dining. "Is this where I take your order or where I die?" Jasmine thought with the kind of dark humor that kept her sane through impossible days. "Welcome to Myers," she said instead, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "What can I get you gentlemen tonight?" Dominic didn't look at the menu. He looked at her. Really looked. Not the way men usually did, not assessing her body or dismissing her presence. His gray eyes studied her face like he was reading a book written in a language only he understood. "Coffee," he said finally. His voice was smooth, deep, with the faintest trace of an Italian accent buried under years of American private schools. "Black, and whatever pie you recommend." The bodyguards ordered the same, barely speaking. Jasmine scribbled the order, acutely aware of his gaze following her movements. "Apple pie's fresh today," she offered. "Made this morning." A slight nod. "Then we'll have that." She walked away feeling his eyes on her back like physical weight. In the kitchen, she leaned against the counter for just a second, breathing deep. Marcus gave her a concerned look but said nothing. He'd worked in Brooklyn long enough to recognize dangerous men when they walked through the door. Jasmine poured 3 coffees with hands that barely trembled, cut 3 generous slices of Mrs. Chen's famous apple pie, and carried it all back to booth 8 on a tray that felt heavier than it should. As she set down the first cup, her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She tried to ignore it, but it buzzed again. Urgent. The hospital's number lit up her screen through the fabric. Her hand slipped. Just slightly. Just enough. Hot coffee splashed across the pristine white tablecloth, dark liquid spreading like spilled ink toward Dominic Valentino's expensive suit. Time fractured into slow motion. Jasmine watched the coffee spread across the table, her stomach dropping through the floor. The two bodyguards were already moving, hands reaching inside their jackets with practiced speed that promised violence. "I'm so sorry," Jasmine gasped, grabbing napkins with shaking hands. "I'm so sorry, sir." "Please." Dominic raised one hand. A single gesture. His men froze mid-motion, hands retreating from wherever weapons lived beneath expensive fabric. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. He stood slowly, coffee dripping from the edge of the table onto his $1,000 shoes. Those storm-gray eyes fixed on her face, and Jasmine felt like a butterfly pinned to a board, unable to move, unable to breathe. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket. Insistent. Desperate. "You need to answer that," Dominic said quietly. His voice held no anger, which somehow made it more terrifying. The calm before violence always was. Jasmine's throat closed around the words. "I can't. I'm working. I'll pay for dry cleaning. I'll answer it." It wasn't a suggestion. With trembling fingers, Jasmine pulled out her phone. The hospital's number glowed accusingly on the cracked screen. "Hello? Ms. Johnson? This is Patricia from Brooklyn Methodist Billing Department. We've been trying to reach you about your sister's account." The diner tilted slightly. Jasmine was aware of Dominic watching her, of his bodyguards flanking him like marble statues, of Marcus peering nervously through the kitchen window, of the entire universe contracting down to this moment of complete humiliation. "I know," Jasmine whispered. "I know I'm behind. I get paid Friday. I can—" "Ms. Johnson, we need $23,000 by Monday or we'll have to transfer your sister to county care. Her specialist won't be available there. Her treatment plan will be discontinued." 23,000. The number hit like a physical blow. Jasmine had $800 saved. 800 against 23,000. 800 against Keisha's life. "I understand," she heard herself say from very far away. "Thank you." She ended the call. Stood there in her stained uniform with coffee-soaked napkins in one hand and her worthless phone in the other, aware that she just spilled coffee on a Mafia boss and received a death sentence for her sister in the same breath. The exhaustion, the fear, the bone-deep desperation. It all crashed over her at once. She looked up at Dominic Valentino, this dangerous man in his expensive suit, and something inside her simply broke open. "I need a husband now," she said. The words came out raw, desperate, honest in the way that only true hopelessness allows. Because married people get better insurance. Because maybe someone's coverage could save her. Because she had nothing left to lose. The diner held its breath. Dominic Valentino's expression didn't change. He stood there, coffee dripping onto Italian leather, studying her with those calculating gray eyes. "Then you are mine now." The words hung in the air like smoke after gunfire. Jasmine stared at him, certain she'd misheard. Certain the exhaustion had finally cracked something vital in her brain. "What?" Dominic pulled out his phone, pressed one button, and spoke in rapid Italian to whoever answered. She caught maybe 3 words. "Avocado domani sposare." "Lawyer tomorrow marry." He ended the call and looked at her with those unreadable eyes. "My lawyer will have paperwork ready by noon tomorrow. We'll be married by 3. You'll be on my insurance by midnight. Your sister's bills will be paid by Monday morning." "This isn't real," Jasmine whispered. "This is a joke. Some kind of sick." "Do I look like I joke?" He didn't. Nothing about Dominic Valentino suggested humor. He looked like a man who made decisions the way other people breathed. Automatically, decisively, without second-guessing. "Why would you do this?" Her voice cracked. "You don't know me. I spilled coffee on you. I'm nobody." Something flickered across his face. Not quite emotion, but close. "You looked me in the eye and told the truth when you had every reason to lie. You asked for what you needed without apology. That's rarer than you think in my world." One of the bodyguards cleared his throat. "Boss, this is—" "I didn't ask your opinion, Marco." Dominic's tone didn't rise, but the bodyguard shut his mouth so fast his teeth clicked. To Jasmine, you have 5 seconds to decide. Yes or no. I don't make offers twice. Jasmine's mind spun. This was insane. Marrying a stranger. A dangerous stranger. A man whose name showed up in federal investigations and unsolved crime reports. But Keisha was dying. The hospital was serious. County care was a death sentence for someone who needed specialists and experimental treatments. What do you want from me? She asked because nothing came free. Not in Brooklyn. Not anywhere. Dominic stepped closer. Even with coffee staining his clothes, he radiated power. What I want is a wife who isn't after my money or my name. Someone real. You need insurance and cash. I need someone who won't bore me to death at charity galas. We both get something. That's how deals work. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the hospital. Another reminder that time was currency she couldn't afford to spend. Jasmine looked at this man, this beautiful, terrifying man, and made a choice that would change everything. Yes, the word came out stronger than she expected. Dominic's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile on someone less dangerous. Smart girl. Be at City Hall tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Wear something nice. Marco will pick you up. If you're rooting for Jasmine right now, hoping this crazy decision somehow works out, hit that subscribe button. Because what happens next? Nobody could have predicted it. The black Mercedes that picked up Jasmine at noon was worth more than every car on her block combined. Marco, the bodyguard from the diner, held the door open without meeting her eyes. She'd borrowed a cream dress from her neighbor, simple but clean, and felt like a child playing dress-up as they drove through Brooklyn toward Manhattan. City Hall was less romantic than movies suggested. Fluorescent lights, tired clerks, couples filing paperwork between lunch breaks. Dominic waited by the stairs in a charcoal suit, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread titled Men Who Could Ruin Your Life. The ceremony took 7 minutes. A judge who clearly recognized Dominic and asked no questions. 2 witnesses pulled from the hallway. Words about sickness and health that felt surreal in Jasmine's mouth. When Dominic slid the ring onto her finger. Platinum, simple, expensive. His hands were steady while hers shook like leaves. You may kiss the bride. Dominic's hand curved around her waist, pulling her close with surprising gentleness. His lips touched hers softly, briefly, but something electric shot through Jasmine's body. He pulled back, gray eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her forget to breathe. Mrs. Valentino, he murmured. How does it feel? Terrifying, she admitted. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. The next 72 hours moved like a fever dream. Dominic's lawyer appeared at Brooklyn Methodist with a briefcase and attitude, settling Keisha's entire bill plus 6 months advance treatment. Her sister cried when Jasmine explained, disbelief and gratitude warring on her thin face. Then came the move. Dominic's penthouse in Tribeca occupied the entire top floor of a building with a doorman who wore white gloves. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Hudson. Art on the walls that belonged in museums. A kitchen bigger than her entire apartment. Your room, Dominic said, opening a door to a suite decorated in soft grays and cream. Private bathroom. Walk-in closet. I had clothes delivered in your size. The closet held more outfits than she'd owned in her entire life. Designer labels she'd only seen in magazines. This is too much, Jasmine whispered. You're my wife now. You represent me. Dominic leaned against the doorframe, studying her. There are rules. You don't leave without security. You don't speak to the press. You attend events when I need you. In exchange, you get everything you need and your sister gets the best care money can buy. And you? What do you get? His expression shifted into something darker, hungrier. Time will tell. That first week, Jasmine learned what being a mob boss's wife meant. Charity galas where women dripping in diamonds whispered behind their hands. Restaurants where chefs personally explained each course. Meetings in back rooms where men spoke in code and everyone deferred to Dominic with nervous respect. But she also learned smaller things. How Dominic took his coffee. That he couldn't sleep without reading first. The scar on his left shoulder from a knife fight at 17. How his voice softened when he called to check on Keisha's treatment progress. 3 months into the marriage, everything changed on a Tuesday. Jasmine had just returned from visiting Keisha at the hospital. Her sister was responding beautifully to treatment, color returning to her cheeks, hope rekindling in her eyes. The penthouse was quiet when she entered, but something felt wrong. The air held tension like static before a storm.
She found Dominic in his office, standing by the window overlooking the city. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled up, and she could see the rigid set of his shoulders. On his desk lay photographs. Crime scene photos. "They're coming for me," he said without turning around. "Federal investigation. RICO charges. They have enough to make it stick this time." Jasmine's heart lurched. "What does that mean?" 25 to life, probably. His voice was flat, resigned. "I've prepared everything. The penthouse is in your name. Trust fund for Keisha's care. You'll be protected, provided for. The marriage can be quietly annulled once." "No." He turned then, surprise flickering across his features. "No?" Jasmine walked toward him, this man who'd saved her sister's life, who'd given her everything while asking for so little. This man who read philosophy before bed and checked on Keisha's test results personally. Who'd held her hand at her first charity gala when anxiety threatened to drown her. Who'd kissed her goodnight exactly once since their wedding, then pulled away like she was made of fire. "No annulment. I'm your wife. For better or worse, remember." "Jasmine." His voice carried warning. "You don't understand what you're." "I understand perfectly." She reached up, touching his face, feeling the roughness of evening stubble under her palm. "You gave me everything when I had nothing. You think I'm running now?" Something broke in his carefully controlled expression. His hands came up to cup her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones with devastating gentleness. "You were supposed to be a business arrangement. Something simple. And what am I now?" "Everything," he breathed, and kissed her like a man drowning. It was nothing like the chaste kiss at City Hall. This was hunger and desperation and 3 months of restraint shattering all at once. Jasmine melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, tasting coffee and mint and possibility. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic pressed his forehead to hers. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway." The federal investigation collapsed 2 weeks later. Someone, Jasmine suspected Dominic's lawyer, and a carefully orchestrated symphony of legal maneuvering, made the evidence disappear into procedural quicksand. The charges were dropped. The investigation closed. That night, Dominic came home early. Found Jasmine in the kitchen attempting to cook, badly, and laughed. Actually laughed, the sound rusty from disuse. "Come here," he said, pulling her close. "Let me show you how it's done." They cooked together, burned the pasta, ordered takeout, and fell into bed tangled together. This time when he kissed her, it tasted like forever. 2 years later, the rooftop garden of the Tribeca penthouse had been transformed into something magical. Jasmine stood among the fairy lights and flowering plants, watching Keisha laugh with Marco, yes, that Marco, the bodyguard who'd driven her to City Hall, now her sister's devoted boyfriend. Keisha looked healthy, vibrant, her lupus in complete remission thanks to the experimental treatment Dominic's money had afforded. She was back in college, studying social work, determined to help others the way she'd been helped. "Mrs. Valentino," a voice said behind her. "Still not tired of that view?" Jasmine turned to find her husband approaching with 2 glasses of wine, looking devastating in a simple black shirt and jeans. Even after 2 years, he still took her breath away. "Never," she said, accepting the glass. "Though I was talking about the garden, not the city." Dominic smiled, a real smile, the kind he only gave her. "Liar." She laughed, leaning into his warmth as his arm came around her waist. Below them, Brooklyn spread out in a tapestry of lights. Somewhere down there was Myers' Diner, still serving coffee and pie, though Jasmine had bought the place 6 months ago and given Marcus a partnership. The staff all had health insurance now. Living wages. Paid sick leave. I never thanked you properly, she said softly. For that night. For everything. Dominic's hand found hers, fingers intertwining, the platinum band on her finger catching the light. You thank me every day just by being here. By choosing to stay when you could have run. Where else would I go? You're my home. He kissed her temple, gentle and reverent. I told you that first night, you looked me in the eye and asked for what you needed. No games. No manipulation. Just truth. Do you know how rare that is? I was desperate. You were brave. Still are. His other hand moved to rest on her stomach, where their daughter was growing, already loved beyond measure. Both of you. Jasmine covered his hand with hers, their rings touching, two lives that should never have intersected now permanently intertwined. From desperation to devotion. From a spilled cup of coffee to a love that rewrote all her definitions of possible. The rooftop door opened and guests began arriving for the anniversary party, business associates, friends, the strange beautiful family they'd built from nothing. But for one more moment, Jasmine and Dominic stood together, watching the city that had witnessed their beginning. I need a husband now, she'd said. Then you are mine now, he'd replied. And he'd kept that promise every day since.